Return uh, two really exciting guards in Jimmy Clark and Day-Day, and then Kareem Rozier as well. Good nucleus back, very old team. I think we have 8 seniors and grad transfers, graduate students. So probably our biggest thing is just making sure that those 8 seniors remain team oriented and making sure that we have good chemistry in order to win basketball games.
We'll open it up to questions. If you could please wait for a microphone. We'll start with Pat. Keith, the continuity, you mentioned in passing there a little bit, just how valuable do you think that's going to be for you guys, that you do have some of these pieces that have been in your system now for you?
Well, we have good continuity, but we also have a lot of newness. And probably the biggest hurdle that we faced is we only had 7 scholarship guys that could practice in the summer. So we've been a little slow developing, but I think, sometimes slow development is fine. It's not really where you start, it's kind of where you end. But the continuity is important, like Jimmy and Day-Day and Kareem Rozier and Trey Williams, even Chavi Barre and David Dixon, Matu Sharansky, they all know what we expect and how we play. And so that helps, now getting the other guys acclimated. But that's college basketball now. It's never going to be like it was. Everybody's going to have a new team every year, and kind of makes the rankings kind of irrelevant because nobody knows who's what or what's who or who has who. So that's kind of what it is now.
Adesina?
Coach, you have a pretty challenging non-conference schedule. College of Charleston, they won their league. Princeton won their league, went to the Sweet 16. Bradley almost won the Missouri Valley as well on that non-conference. How excited are you to have a veteran team go up against a schedule that is pretty daunting before it goes to the A-10 schedule?
That's a tough schedule. There's no question about it, and it's tough because those teams are a lot like how my teams were at Akron. Like they're used to winning. They win every single year. Their coaches won. They win games even when they shouldn't win because they believe they're going to win. So it's hard, but we have guys that know how to win too. So it'll be telling, but I think it'll be good preparation because ultimately, we want to get as many at-large bids as we can in this league, but the one sure way to get in the tournament is to win the tournament. So you have to play good people to get yourself ready for the tournament.
Hey Coach, Tom Harkness over at the Vault Network. Like a lot of teams, a lot of roster turnover for you the past couple of years. You did mention bringing back a lot of guys this year in particular. And how refreshing is it to have kind of a continued sense of continuity, especially with guys like Jimmy and Day-Day next to you here, who had fantastic seasons last year, and obviously a lot to build off this upcoming season.
Well, it's more what I'm used to. We had kind of I would call it a dinosaur plan at Akron. We had 8 guys every year that were 3, 4, and 5-year guys for us, and all high school guys, very few transfers and no junior college players, hardly at all. So that worked well for us because it allowed our system to stay in place, and I think this is the closest we've had to having that kind of lack of turnover. And so I think that will help us in the long run. Certainly, we're going to go as far as Jimmy and Day-Day play. Like when your best players play at a high level and care about winning, you have a great chance to win. And when they don't, then it's a little bit harder. But Jimmy and Day-Day and Kareem and those Trey Williams, they care about winning, which is going to be key for us.
Day-Day, what can you say about what Jimmy brings to the table, particularly at the defensive end? And Keith, if you want to follow up on just exactly what makes him such a remarkable defensive player.
I would just say his uniqueness and his just God-given ability to just do the things he do on defense. It's kind of like you can't teach it. You can teach somebody the certain principles, but what he does, and how he gambles, it's kind of unreal to me because I haven't really firsthand seen that from a person that's playing with someone. So it's just, I love it. I love to see it, and he also drives me to play harder and just be a better defender on my end.
It's a great question. When you coach instinctive and unique individuals, you have to let them loose. Jimmy will drive you crazy at times because he'll do some wild things and he'll give up a back cut or two, but one point in the season, he's one of the best stealers in the country. And my thing with him, and let me say this as well, like when he was at VCU, he was not a very good offensive player. He wasn't a very good shooter, but he's put a lot of time in. He's a high-level scorer as well. But Jimmy's uniqueness is hard to explain. Like the things he does, you can't teach. I've been around a couple other guys like that you can't teach what they do. But he's a guy that wants to be good. He spends a lot of time in the gym. My thing with him is just making sure that he emphasizes what makes him great, and not try to get into areas that doesn't make him great. And you know, that's natural. But the things that he does at the defensive end, no one else in the country can do. And so I have to make sure that he doesn't drift away from those strengths. Kind of like Day-Day, like his ability to shoot the ball, not many people can do. So our job is to make sure he expands his game, but doesn't forget like where his bread is buttered. And so that's probably the hardest things with guys, because as they go, they want more and more and more, which I understand. But they also want to make sure that they stay within their strengths.
And Zachary, did you have more?
Yeah. Of course, that's on record. Thanks, Keith.
I'm sorry, Zach.
Since I shielded your eyes, Day-Day, this question's for you. Just have to ask again, going into last season, just what you saw as the vision of this team regaining its identity, and now that it's regained, how much more can be strengthened?
Really just our drive, staying with our principles, our game plan, just focusing on us, mainly knowing that we control the game we're playing against ourselves. So just trying to continue to keep that drive and know that we're out there on the floor, we're playing versus our opponent, but really we're playing against ourselves.
David?
David Jablonski, Daily News. Coach, the A-10 was a multiple bid league for many years until last year. Are you optimistic it can get back to where it was?
Well, let me say this. Again, I've coached a long time. The A-10 has unbelievable coaches. They have unbelievable programs that put a lot of money into their programs. I mean, you talk about, we've had National Coach of the Year and Anthony Grant. You look, Frank Martin's gone to the Final Four, Archie Miller, and I'm not even talking about, some of the younger coaches in this league. They're smarter than all of us. Like they're unbelievable, and this league puts a lot of money into basketball. Now, with that being said, the deck is stacked. The reality is the deck is stacked. There's about 4 to 6 at-large bids for mid-major teams like us. So the key to it is the bottom to the top all have to be good, and we have to win in November and December. So if we can get a lot of top, 75 type teams throughout our league, now we have more quad 1 opportunities than quad 2. But it certainly doesn't appear like it'll ever be like when we get 6 or 7 out of our league, which in some ways is unfair. Because a road win in the Atlantic 10 is just as hard as a road win in the Big 10. And 7 and 10 or 8 and 10 is getting you in the NCAA tournament in the Big 10, and 13 and 5 is not getting you in the NCAA tournament in our league. So I don't think a lot of those high major teams would want to play an A-10 team in the NCAA tournament, though. Which unfortunately last year VCU and St. Mary's played, I think, right? Which to me is, again, I don't want to be critical, but to me that's a cardinal sin.
And is there a clear-cut favorite in the league this year?
I mean, again, like I told you before, I don't think you can make any judgments because there's so much roster turnover. You can be picked 15th and have the best team in the league because nobody knows how it's all going to come together because there's so much movement. I mean, as evidenced by us last year, we were capable of beating anybody in the league, and we were picked 15th, and probably rightfully so from that aberration we had the year before.
Go Pat back, right? Keith, the front court, we haven't talked too much about your front court at this point, but there are some new faces there, the twins, Mahorchik, a kid from Georgia Southern, I guess it was. How has that group kind of stood out to you at this point? Who do you feel like are going to be kind of your mainstays in that group?
That's another very difficult question. So Mahorchik won't be back until probably December, so we don't know anything. I mean, he's a big human being. He's had success rebounding the ball at all levels. He's been a good player most everywhere he's been. We've got the two young big ones, Chave Barre and David Dixon, who certainly are our two best athletes up front. Huge upside. And then we return Trey Williams, and then Fusini Drame has played large amounts of basketball, and Andre Saversov as well. So that's probably the hardest deal for us, is figuring out, how to put them in good positions. And if you really analyze our team, when we've been really good in this league, we pretty much mauled people inside with Mike Hughes and Marcus Weathers, and we were a little bit different than everybody else. We played old school, kind of just ramming it down people's throats, and then still had enough skill on the perimeter to be good. So that's kind of where we need to go now, is that balance between that inside out and driving the ball type of team. And we're still trying to figure out who can score it down there for us. If we can get scoring down in there, and get a good blend of figuring out who should be playing, I think we'll have a good team. And if we're just so scoring it down there, I think we'll be, just a good team, but not a great team.
You got time for a couple more questions? We'll start here in the front, Zachary.
Keith, it's hard to say going into a season whether maybe this is your best team here, but is this the team that maybe has the best attitude, or what attributes do you think could make this team great?
I think the depth is one thing. I think, we're going to go, it's going to be very dependent on how good our great players play. Like most teams. Like, the rest of them will all play their role and be really good players, but, how good can Day be? How good can Jimmy be? And then can we get that inside guy that becomes that third wheel? Because it's no different than the NBA. You need that third wheel. And so who can be the third wheel? And then who's the best role player out of the bunch? That's going to be the key for this team, and how it all comes together. It's too early to tell whether it's our best team. We've had some good teams here, so that's going to be the key for us.
Take our last question in the back.
Coach Chris DeSanto, Learfield Network. You're a great person to ask because, as you said, the landscape across college basketball has changed with the personnel turnover so much. Tactically, how do you blend simplifying the playbook early on, but getting the most out of this group of guys because you know you have the talent ultimately to expand that playbook?
That's a phenomenal question. So, that's probably the hugest dilemma in my mind. Because I'm kind of a guy that for years has put everything in and then cleaned it all up, right? Because I've had an older team every year, right? And so for me, the dilemma, do you keep doing that or do you simplify? Because even the guys that have played for a lot of years, they still have played different styles, and we got a pretty big playbook. So I don't know the answer to that, really. I know the answer in the long term, but in the short term, you can get smacked doing that. So we've kind of been kind of wide open to this point, because that's kind of how I like to do it, wide open, give everybody an opportunity, throw the whole kitchen sink at them, and now the next 3 weeks, I think we're going to narrow it down a little bit. So that's kind of how I kind of like to do things. So I think it hurts you in the short term, but I still think we have to win the A-10 to do what we want to do. Because again, the bids are small. There's not many bids. So to me, that's the best plan of attack. Now, I don't know if the fan base will like that when they're not winning as much as they want to win early, but at 65, I don't think I can worry about that too much, right?
Coach, Day, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.